Welcome. In this explainer, we're going to break down the key concepts of consumer equilibrium and demand, all to help you get ready for your exams.
So here's how we're going to tackle this. We'll start with the basics of demand, then move into consumer choice and utility. After that, we'll get into demand elasticity, and then, this is the important part, we'll do some practice MCQs with a full analysis. We'll wrap everything up with a high-yield exam summary.
Okay, let's dive right into our first section, the basics of demand. It's really important to get these concepts down because pretty much everything else in this module is built on them.
So, first things first, what do we actually mean by demand in economics? Well, it's not just about wanting something. It's a two-part deal. You have to have the willingness to buy a product, but you also, and this is key, have to have the ability to actually pay for it. If you don't have both of those, it's not considered economic demand.
And this brings us right to the law of demand. This is a really fundamental idea in economics. All it says is that there's an inverse relationship between price and the quantity people want to buy. So, put simply, when the price of something goes down, the quantity consumers will buy goes up. It's pretty intuitive, right? And this relationship is exactly why the demand curve always slopes downwards.
Now, have a look at this graph. It's a really great way to visualize this. See that whole line labeled D? That represents demand for apples, the entire relationship between price and quantity. But any single point on that line, that represents the quantity demanded at a specific price. So for example, at 25 cents, the quantity demanded is 6,000 bushels. Getting the difference between the entire curve and a single point on it, that is super important.
All right, here's a big one. MCQ alert. This is probably one of the most common things people get mixed up on in exams. You have to know the difference between a change in quantity demanded and a change in demand. It's simple, but you gotta lock it in. A change in the good's own price causes a movement along the curve you already have. But a change in any other factor, we're talking income, tastes, anything else, that causes a shift of the whole curve.
And here's what that shift actually looks like. Let's say consumer income goes up. Well, that's one of those other factors, right? So it doesn't just move us to a different point on the original curve D1. No, it shifts the entire curve over to the right, to D2. And what this means is that at every single price point, people are now willing and able to buy more apples than they were before.
So, we've got the basics down, but why does the demand curve actually work that way? To understand that, we need to go a little deeper into the psychology of it all. And that brings us to our second section, consumer choice and utility. This is all about what drives our decisions and satisfaction.
Okay, let's talk about utility. Think about eating pizza. Total utility is the total amount of happiness you get from eating, let's say, 4 slices. Easy enough. But marginal utility, that's the extra bit of happiness you get from each additional slice. You know how it is. That first slice is amazing. The second one is great too. By the time you get to that 4th slice, it's okay, but the extra satisfaction you get from it is way less than that first one. That's marginal utility.
And that whole pizza experience, it's actually a formal economic law, the law of diminishing marginal utility. All it says is that as you keep consuming more of something, the extra satisfaction you get from each new unit goes down. And this is so important because it's the psychological reason why the demand curve slopes downward. You're just not willing to pay as much for that 4th slice of pizza as you were for the first, because you don't get as much enjoyment from it.
All right, now let's look at something called an indifference curve. You can think of it as a map of happiness. It's a line that shows all the different combinations of 2 goods that would make you equally happy. For instance, maybe you'd be just as satisfied with 3 coffees and 1 donut as you would with 1 coffee and 4 donuts. Since both of those options give you the same level of satisfaction, they would both be points on the very same indifference curve.
So we know that when price goes down, quantity demanded goes up. But by how much? How sensitive are people to a price change, really? To answer that question, we need to get into our third section, understanding demand elasticity.
So what is price elasticity of demand? Simply put, it's just a measurement of how much the quantity people demand changes when the price changes. Think of it like this. If the price of a critical medicine doubles, most people will still have to buy it. That demand is not very responsive. We call that inelastic. But if the price of your favorite brand of soda doubles, you'll probably just switch to a different one. That demand is very responsive, or elastic. Now, this concept of elasticity exists on a spectrum, and we break it down into 5 main categories. It goes all the way from perfectly inelastic, where the quantity demanded doesn't change at all no matter what happens to the price, to perfectly elastic, where the tiniest price increase makes the quantity demanded drop straight to zero. Knowing these 5 degrees will be really helpful for your exams.
Okay, another MCQ alert for you. This is the total outlay method, and it comes up on exams a lot. Basically, this table is your best friend. The key thing to remember is the relationship between price, total spending, and elasticity. For example, if a price goes down and total spending goes up, that tells you demand is elastic. Why? Because the increase in quantity sold was so big it outweighed the lower price.
All right, we've covered a lot of theory. Now it's time to see how it works in practice. We're moving into Section 4, where we'll go through some exam-style MCQs. For each one, I'll show you the question, and then we'll do a full breakdown of the answer.
Okay, here's our first one. An addition made to total utility by consuming an extra unit of a commodity is known as… Take a look at the options. Which one fits that definition?
The correct answer here is D, marginal utility. This is a straightforward definition question, but for your exams, it's just as important to know why the other answers are wrong. So, A, total utility, that's the satisfaction from all the units, not the extra one. B, the law of diminishing marginal utility, that's the rule that describes how marginal utility changes, it's not the concept itself. And C, conditional utility, that's just a distractor term thrown in there to confuse you.
Let's try question 2. Pay very close attention to the phrase movement along the demand curve. Think back to our MCQ alert. What is the one and only thing that causes a movement instead of a shift?
And the answer is D, a decrease in the price of apples. This question is testing you directly on that movement versus shift concept we talked about. Remember, a change in the good's own price is the only thing that causes a movement along the curve. All the other options, A, income, B, tastes, and C, the price of a related good, are those other factors that cause a full-on shift of the curve.
All right, last practice question. This one's about the connection between income and demand. What's the economic term for goods that people actually buy less of when their income goes up?
The correct answer is D, inferior goods. This is a key definition you just have to memorize. Normal goods, option A, are the opposite. You buy more of them as your income increases. Complementary and substitute goods are about the relationship between two different products, not between a product and your income. So, by definition, when demand for a good has a negative relationship with income, it's an inferior good.
And that brings us to our final section. Let's pull everything together into a quick, high-yield summary. Think of this as the absolute must-know list of takeaways to look over right before you walk into your exam.
So, when it all comes down to it, mastering these definitions, and more importantly, these distinctions, is what will get you the marks. Really focus on that inverse relationship in the law of demand. Nail the difference between a movement and a shift. And be solid on the concepts of diminishing marginal utility and elasticity. Use this as your final checklist. It really covers the most important things we've discussed. And as you review, think about this. How do these basic ideas about one consumer's choice start to build the foundation for understanding an entire market?